This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham and Scott German. We're going to talk some UVA basketball as the Cavs will go to Louisville tomorrow night. But we're going to talk some ACC first. And Scott and I talked on Monday doing our weekly review of our ACC Power Poll, looking at the ACC from the NCAA tournament perspective. And I think, Scott, we both probably presumed that that Duke and North Carolina were solid in the 2 and 3 spots going into the ACC tournament next week. Thought they'd have some tune-up games. Duke playing Virginia Tech Monday night, Carolina playing Miami last night, heading into their big Saturday season finale. And it didn't turn out so easily. Both teams losing on their way to that rivalry game. And so now the ACC is really up for grabs. Especially, I mean, even Duke at number 2 is pretty set, but anything else can happen between now and getting to Brooklyn. So, even what we thought we had figured out, Scott, isn't quite the case.
No, exactly, and I think what it proves is what we've certainly as UVA fans, what we've kind of been getting used to all season as far as the ACC season is concerned, is that the only consistent thing about the ACC has been Virginia. From game 1 to game now coming up on game 17.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not surprising that they're running away with this or ran away with the regular season title, because everybody else is taking turns of being very inconsistent. We saw that with just when we thought Duke and North Carolina were poised to just firmly entrench themselves into those 2-3 spots. They both looked anything but invincible this past week. Duke losing Monday night down in Blacksburg, and then of course Carolina just to me just an unexplainable loss last night at home against Miami.
Yeah, now look at the standings, and I don't know if anybody has done anything more authoritative than this yet, so I'll just say it this way. I think anywhere from 2 to 9 is still up for grabs, because I even look at Duke. Now, they're 12-5, but Clemson at 10-6, NC State at 10-6. I don't know. I don't know how it would work out. I know that NC State beat Duke in a game this year, so head-to-head, maybe they could have a home. They could have a tiebreaker. Clemson, I think, lost to Duke. I know they lost to Duke recently. But that said, certainly more between the 3 and 9 spots. Right now, you got North Carolina at 11-6, Clemson and NC State at 10-6, Virginia Tech and Miami are both 10-7, Louisville at 9-7, Florida State even at 8-8. I mean, there's anything that can happen with these teams, and I mean, I know we say this a lot. A lot of right now is about prepping for March. For some of these teams, of course, they're still trying to play meaningful basketball in March. But there's so much to be decided in these next few days. Saturday should be real interesting. I don't know that Duke game. I mean, I guess we could talk about this, Scott. Between the Duke loss at Virginia Tech and the North Carolina loss at home to Miami, which one was more surprising to you? I mean, I know both were surprising to both of us, but which one was maybe more surprising to you the way it played out?
Well, I think they're both kind of equally as surprising, because, I did not see Duke losing to Tech. Tech coming off of just a bad performance at home. We talked about it in our earlier podcast about not being able to hold home court advantage of losing to Louisville on Saturday. And then having to do the quick turnaround. I didn't see Duke going in there and losing. Duke coming into the game playing very well. But I think we both have some thoughts on that. And I also thought North Carolina was, really trending upwards. Miami hadn't been playing that well as of late. I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. I think both games, both outcomes were very surprising. Getting back to the Duke-Virginia Tech game, we talked about this. I'm not sure about whether it was off the air or not, but we talked about the learning curve that Duke was going to have to go through again with getting used to playing with Bagley. And I'm not sure, having watched that game Monday night, that's a learning curve they're going to have time for, or that it's even possible for them to disappoint them. I think in Duke's case, you've got the old saying goes, addition by subtraction. I think this for Duke, with Bagley being out there, two bigs playing at the same time, subtraction by addition. That they clearly were not the same team and went 4-0 while Bagley was sidelined with a knee injury.
Yeah, and I thought it was very interesting, the game broadcast that Monday night, Big Monday. Dan Dockich was the commentator, and he normally does Big Ten basketball, and I think he even said it was maybe his first ACC game outside of that Big Ten ACC Challenge this season. And so he doesn't watch a lot of ACC. I think Dan Dockich he's usually right on. He's, of course, among the guys. He was one of the few guys who's been very critical of the NCAA dating back a couple of years on this recent now scandal. He's not surprised. He's actually taken some heat for his criticism of Louisville, for example, dating back a good while. He was pointing out about Duke, a lot of what you were saying there, Scott, as far as, he thinks that he even said this in the first half. He said, boy, I can see why this team was playing so well without Bagley in the lineup. And he's a talented player, but you throw the ball in there, it doesn't come back out, and the guy doesn't play defense. And, Grayson Allen plays a lot better without him in there, it seems. So it's a weird thing to say. A guy who's going to probably be the number one pick in the draft, you're maybe better without him. But he's really a minus defender. And, he doesn't pass the ball. He's a black hole on the in the post. As far as the Carolina game, though, I think that's going to be the one. I'll go ahead and say that's the more surprising of the two. And I'm going to put it. I'm going to use Bill Walton terminology here, Scott, to explain how badly I think North Carolina played last night. That was the 17th worst performance in North Carolina history. Not just they lost the game, but they laid the egg the way they did. Now they rallied, tied the game with 4 seconds left on that three-pointer by Joel Berry II. But man, they were down 16 in the second half at home to a Miami team that, Scott, as you mentioned, hadn't been playing all that well lately. Had to rally to nip Boston College at home and kind of keep their NCAA tournament hopes on the right track. And they dominated for most of that game last night. They allowed that comeback at the end, but then hit the half-court shot to win it at the buzzer. And I was just surprised, not that Carolina lost that game, but that they were so out of sorts for much of that game and had to rally the way they did at the end. Carolina, I mean, you had them number 2 in your power poll. They've been playing great basketball lately, completely laid an egg last night.
Yeah, so, I haven't listened to you. I think maybe now I probably would give that edge. That would be the bigger of the two upsets. Because Tech had also proven earlier in the season that they could turn around from an awful performance on Saturday to follow it up with a very solid effort on Monday when they lost to Florida State on a Saturday afternoon in Castle, and then less than 48 hours later they beat North Carolina. But that was not a North Carolina team that was playing very well. That was a Carolina team that looked like they were in jeopardy of maybe even making the NCAA tournament. Duke came into Castle Coliseum playing extremely well, already had Bagley back for one game, so you felt like he had shaken the cobwebs. I didn't see them losing, and early on it looked like it was going to be a blowout. It looked like Duke was going to reach triple figures in that game, but Tech really responded well, I thought, especially on the defensive end of the play. They have Duke scoreless for the last 7.5 minutes. That was not a good Duke team, and I think it's going to be a really interesting end of the season to see how Krzyzewski blends that team, because there's only one ball, and you got 3 guys out there, Allen, Bagley, and Carter, that are going to all want their shots. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for Duke remaining of the season. Carolina they just did not look good at all last night, especially defensively. So, it's, getting back to my earlier comment, Virginia has proven from the start of this ACC season, they are the cream of the crop, and there isn't anyone close right now.
Real quick, would you agree with my assessment that was the 17th worst performance in North Carolina history?
Well, first of all, I would like to maybe listen to the Italian national anthem first before, just to get in the right mood to really reflect upon certainly one of the top. I would say this: it was one of the top 20 worst Carolina performances in Tar Heel basketball history for sure.
There we go. Our Bill Walton reference of the.
People that don't know Bill Walton or have not listened, you are truly depriving yourself of a college basketball icon by not following Bill Walton. I don't care if you like him, you hate him. He is pure entertainment.
And I wish I could get away with being Bill Walton when I do my ESPN broadcast, when I do college baseball broadcast in the spring. But
you should try.
I don't think they'd let me back in the booth. But and I didn't win 3 National Player of the Year awards, and I can't ride a bike up a mountain. So I guess I haven't deserved that. I don't deserve that. So switching gears, let's talk UVA-Louisville. These two teams have played this year. Virginia won that game, and it was. Scott, now, okay, I guess I got to go back to my Walton terminology here. That may have been the 3rd weirdest UVA basketball game I've seen in my entire life. I say that because the final score was 74-64, but it felt like a track meet. That there were only 61 possessions per team in the game. Louisville, at one point in the second half, made 9 out of 10 shots in one stretch. Over an 8-minute stretch, they were 9 for 10 from the floor. After that stretch, Ty Jerome made back-to-back three-pointers, and they had gained no ground. After going 9 for 10 from the floor, they gained no ground because Virginia, now they weren't 9 for 10 in that stretch, but Virginia offensively in that game shot 53.7% from the field. And so Louisville scored 1.27 points per possession in the second half and actually lost ground. They lost 4 points on the lead, scoring 1.27 points per possession. That's by far... It's the strangest game of the season for Virginia to win a game against a quality opponent like Louisville by 10 points, playing defense that way, and we get to play these guys again. So obviously there will be adjustments made by both sides, but I don't know, Scott. I mean, you remember that game. That game just stood out to me as being just strange from a Virginia perspective.
Yeah, it certainly didn't seem like a 10-point game, and Louisville played very well. I thought that their coach Padgett did a good job, and it just did not. You look at the scoreboard when the game was over, and I know my insides didn't feel like it was a 10-point game. It felt like it was a 1-point nail biter. But we second time around, it's probably going to be some adjustments. I think Vegas thinks it's going to be another close game. I just looked a little bit ago. Not that I'm a betting person, but I do like to see what the experts, so to speak, think. And I think Virginia's opened up as about a 3.5-point favorite. So they anticipate another game, another tough game, which will probably be senior night in Louisville. I've been keeping up with some of their games this year, and they've had kind of an up and down season. They haven't been drawing that well at their the Yum Yum Center, which I think seats about 23,000. They've had some games where they've only had it half capacity. So I think this game is close to being a sellout. So should be a hostile environment, but hey, UVA is one game away from posting the first 9-0 regular season record in ACC history. So we're at the doorstep of making history.
Yeah, going 9-0 on the road in any conference is tough. 9-0 in the ACC has never happened before. And what this Louisville team does well is what you think would do well against a Virginia team, at least Virginia's pack line defense. We all know the pack line defense. It's a man defense with zone principles. You have basically 5 guys who have not quite a foot in the lane, but a foot within that 17-foot arc around the basket, imaginary 17-foot arc around the basket. And it really, it's so good at helping. It really takes away your pick and roll action. It takes away a lot of motion offense action. Louisville doesn't run any of that. They've got big guys. They'll run a high post. High post offenses work well. We saw Georgia Tech do that against Virginia a week and a half ago. Actually, a week ago. And they've got big guys to run it. Ray Spalding is 6'10". Anas Mahmoud, 7 feet tall. They got a 6'11" guy in their rotation off the bench. And, their guards are good dribble penetrators. Quentin Snyder didn't have a good game against Virginia the first time, only 5 points on 1 of 5 shooting. But Ding Adele had 15 points in that game, a 6'7" slasher. Kind of reminds me a bit of Mariel Shayok with just a little bit more finish, if you want to say. VJ King had a decent game against Virginia as well that first time out. So they're a team that's really built, and also they're a great defensive team. I mean, they're ranked 18th in the country in defensive efficiency by KenPom.com. But that's why it's so weird that Virginia, in a game where Virginia gave up so much offensively, both, Louisville shoots 50% from the floor for the game. They had that great second half, shot 60% in the second half. Spalding was 8 for 10 from the floor in that game. They were 12 of 23 in the lane in that game was Louisville. 12 of 22, in the lane was Louisville in that game. All that said, Virginia out-offensed a pretty good offensive team. And so, that game was so atypical for this series. Since Virginia and since Louisville came into the ACC, I think that was 2014, Virginia's really owned this series. I remember one loss, a last-second shot at Louisville about 2015 season that beat Virginia by 1. But I think Virginia's really, for the most part, owned this series with Louisville. But they've all been tight, the low-possession games, low-scoring games, games in the 50s, and ugly games, defensive games. And so I think we'll revert back to that norm tomorrow night. I think we'll see another not just a nail biter, but a nail biter that'll make you bite your hands off. It'll be such a tense game and a lot of bricks, a lot of rebounds, a lot of turnovers, that kind of game, because that's what they typically play. I just don't see the January 31st game playing out again.
No, I don't either, and I think it's going to be a close game. Again, these next two games, we haven't talked about Notre Dame yet. The news on that, the big news on that is Notre Dame's getting Bonte Coleman back. They had anticipated that he was only going to come out and play tonight, just sparingly on senior night, just to make that token appearance. But now it looks like he's going to get maybe 20 minutes or so, and so you anticipate him even getting more playing time Saturday. But my point is we play two teams that are, I'm not sure if I would say Louisville's on the bubble, but Notre Dame certainly could play themselves on. I think they're off now, but they win tonight, which I think is a given since they're playing Pittsburgh, I believe.
That's right.
So, that's 18. They're 17-12. That would be 18-12. Saturday is a chance for them to play themselves back on the bubble again. So we're playing two teams that clearly need to win and clearly could benefit hugely by picking up wins against UVA. So, when you're the number one team in the nation, you're going to get the best team shot every game. And, the positive to that is we've been number one for quite a while now. This is third week. We're in our third week, so we're used to that. And Tony's going to have the players it's ready. It's not as though they're going to be blindsided by somebody coming out and just being fired up to play us. We know what we're going to get.
Yeah, I think you're right in both cases there. Louisville, I think they're closer to the bubble than some people do personally. Their RPI is a little lower than they'd like. I think that that win over Virginia Tech on Saturday was a nice. I think if they had lost that game, they would be right on the edge right now of either getting in or getting out. They're probably insulated maybe 4 or 5 spots away, but they can't afford to hiccup this week. They've got Virginia, they've got NC State this weekend, and both Virginia and Louisville, I should say, have that quick turnaround, playing Thursday then playing Saturday. So, not a lot of rest there. We're playing at Louisville, have to come back and then play at home, and Louisville's playing at home, but then they got to travel to NC State. So not easy in either case. Easier for Virginia because we're playing for a number 1 national seed, and I've even seen some analysts, Jerry Palm, the CBS sports analyst, says Virginia could lose its last 2, lose its first game in the ACC tournament, still be the number 1 national seed. That's how impressive the resume is even right now. Now, you don't want to do that, but I'm just saying that's how, the stakes are a little different for Virginia. Going into this one, going into Saturday, I think the focus for Tony Bennett and the staff is probably as much on managing minutes. And like I said this to, I was commenting to someone on Twitter today who asked me about the game, and I said I think as much on Thursday night as anything else, manage minutes and make sure you get on the plane, hopping back on the plane to Charlottesville from Louisville with a healthay team. Nobody gets hurt. You don't stretch anybody out too far. Maybe get Marco Anthony some minutes. Maybe get Mamadi Diakite some more minutes. Maybe even sneak Jay Huff in there for some minutes. But keep your starters around 25 to 30 minutes if possible. Win the game. Play as well as you can. But it's not life or death for Virginia. It might be life or death for Louisville, and it definitely is life or death as far as NCAA tournament is concerned for Notre Dame. So, yeah, I mean, you got two teams with differing sets of motivations in each of those two games, Thursday and Saturday. And I like what you brought up there, too, the Bonzie Colson angle. I'll throw this, Scott, out to you for thought. Colson comes back tonight. He's expected to play about 20 minutes. I don't know that he gets much more against Virginia on Saturday because, he's got to – I mean, if I'm Mike Bray, I'd probably maybe stretch him 20, 25 minutes on Saturday. But I remember what Virginia did with Justin Anderson a few years ago, that 2015 season, of course, and it didn't work out. He came back later, a couple days later, a couple games later than Colson's coming back here. But when you first come back, you're not Justin Anderson. You're not Bonzie Colson. You're out there just trying to get your legs out from under you. You run up and down the court a couple times, get winded. It's just different playing than it is practicing. And so my guess is that Bray's really looking at these two games as tune-ups for Colson for next week, and then of course beyond. But I don't know that you can expect Colson certainly tonight to have Bonzie Colson-like game, and I don't even know if Saturday, but certainly by next, I guess Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when Notre Dame plays. You need him back in midseason form because that's when you really need him. So, but that said, yeah, that Notre Dame's been playing well without him. They've been playing great without him the last few games. So, but I wonder your thoughts on the Colson situation particularly.
Well, and we compared that to Justin Anderson. The big difference is that when Anderson went out, UVA certainly had an ample amount of talent still left out on the floor, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, UVA was 10-0 maybe during Anderson's time away, 10-0, 10-1, or something like that. Notre Dame, even though they played better the last couple games, they dropped off the map as far as being a national title contender because of the absence of Coleman. And they also one of the other top players too. So I'm not sure how much Bray is he going to expect from him. He might provide more of a moral, just to have him back out on the floor might be more of a moral thing for Notre Dame. But again, they're playing well, and that there is that chemistry in basketball that you have to really be, aware of, because the guys are out there, they're used to playing, they're used to the rotation, the substitution, where players are on the floor, and bringing in somebody that hasn't played in a couple of months, that could be a little tricky. But at this point in the season, before Notre Dame stands, they don't have a lot to lose. I think you're right. I think he's probably going to get 20 minutes tonight and maybe similar amount of minutes Saturday. Whether he's going to have a real effectiveness, I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think
your comments about UVA minutes. So are you thinking that UVA, that Coach Bennett is going to take the mentality of comparing this? Let's compare this to an NFL team that's clinched a playoff spot. The last game of the season, or the last two games of the season, do you start playing some reserves? Do you start limiting the amount of time on the field your starters? Is that what you're suggesting that Tony might want to do?
I'm suggesting I would, in the ideal world, I would like him to do that, I guess. I mean, he knows his team and has, won a lot more games as a college coach than I have, to say the least. But, at this stage, it's not that these games aren't important. Every time you go out there and throw the ball up in the air, you want to win the game. Obviously, you want to play as well as you can. But, I would like to see, for example, last week's game, the game against Georgia Tech, Ty Jerome played 38 minutes. Kyle Guy played 35. I would hope that we could win this game, and then yet those guys don't have to play that many minutes, because I look at it and I know some people will think differently. I've analyzed this over the course of Virginia's seasons dating back to the 2011-2012 season, the first team that Tony had that went to an NCAA tournament. These teams can, when the starters play too many minutes, they can peter out. We've seen it happen. I wrote a column about this a couple weeks ago, and so, to me, they had that 8-day break last week, leading into the Georgia Tech game. For the most part, Saturday's win over Pitt was great because it was a big win, but also the starters only got 25 minutes. At most 25 minutes in that game. And so, ideally, if he was able to keep the starters to 28 to 30, at most 32 minutes each of these next two games heading into, and then there's another break because we don't play till next Thursday. That's the advantage of the double bye. If you're able to do that, I think we're looking ahead towards March 15th, March 16th, the first round of the NCAA tournament. I'm saying this. I'm going to cover the ACC tournament in Brooklyn next week. The fan in me would love to see Virginia playing Saturday night, getting ready to raise a banner. The fan in me also would not mind it if they didn't play 3 games in 3 nights, because the banner that matters is the one in April. And I wonder if we can just run ourselves out between now and the tournament, and maybe kind of play ourselves out of an NCAA tournament championship situation by playing too many minutes now. That's a fear I've got.
First of all, as far as managing the minutes, that's one thing. I don't think you manage the minutes at the expense of losing either tomorrow night's game or Saturday, because this team's rested. They had 8 days off. They played Saturday. Then they had 5 days off. They had 8 days off, and they played Saturday in a game that was basically not even a glorified scrimmage. And then 5 more days off before they play tonight, and then close out the season Saturday in what will be an emotionally charged game against Notre Dame. And then another 4 days off before they play again, take the court in New York on Thursday. So I don't think fatigue is really that big a deal right now. I think you just play the game out. If it means Kyle Guy gets 35 minutes to win the game, that's what you have to do. As far as the tournament, boy, you know what? I really value that ACC championship. Obviously, a national championship would be the ultimate end goal, but it sure is nice to know that you're the best among the competition that you're competing in, night out, from January to early March. That's also important to see that banner hanging ACC champions. That's all, to me, that's pretty important too.
Yeah, I come at this as much from a baseball perspective as I do from a basketball perspective. You got to manage your pitching staff. You got to manage your innings. You want to win in October. You can't throw too many innings in July and August. And we're in September now. From a baseball perspective, we're in late September now. We're getting ready for the postseason, and it's a different perspective. But I have looked at this over the years. I'm thinking back to the 2012 team, for example. That 2012 team for Virginia, I'll quickly pull it up here, was 21-6. They lost 4 of their last 5. That was a team that Malcolm Brogdon got hurt late that season, so the minutes got even more so on the starters because Brogdon got hurt. Brogdon wasn't a starter; he was a 6th man on that team. He was a freshman that year, but that team sort of ran itself out of legs. The 2013 team actually played itself in the NIT after that big win over Duke. That win got Virginia to 20-8. Everybody thought the win over Duke that year, the game that Harris had 35 points in JPJ, that clinched something for them. They lost 3 out of 4 to finish the season and got an NIT bid. 2014 went great. Got to the Sweet 16. 2015, I think because of Justin getting hurt, that team went 9-1 in Justin's absence. Justin came back. My feeling was that they played their starters too many minutes. I looked at the numbers; it kind of showed they ran out of gas that year. The 2016 team didn't. In fact, the 2016 team was the best managed in terms of minutes of any of Tony Bennett's teams. The starters only averaged 69.8% of the minutes. The only team under 70% that Tony's coached, and that team went to the Elite Eight and should have gone to a Final Four. Last year's team, we know Austin Nichols going down, that killed everything. So we'll throw that one out. But this year's team, in terms of starters playing percentage of minutes, It's right at 70%. It's actually at it's right at 70%. So he's over the course of the season managing it well. But I want to make sure. This is me. I mean, I guess, Scott, here's what I'm doing. We've talked about this before. We're now fans and followers and analysts of a team that is 26-2, doesn't have many warts, and so I'm finding warts that don't exist. And if there's anything out there that would be a question mark, it would be that. I don't see a lot of question marks about this team, so I'm not going to tell you that the engine's running perfectly. I hear just a little bit of a knock and ping somewhere, and I'm going to tell you what it is. If it's anything, it's that. And so I would like to make sure heading into March those guys got legs, and so I'm probably creating something out of nothing, but that's kind of what we're here for.
We are Cavalier fans, so we do tend to look for those dark clouds that might be 300 miles southeast on the horizon, but we still look as hard as we can until we find one. But I'm confident that Coach Bennett will manage those minutes appropriately down the stretch of the season. So, you might be just a little bit of a worry, but then again, hey, it's better to be conscientious of that than have it blindside us. But I don't think Coach Bennett's going to let that affect the way. I think if we lose and we don't win a national championship, we get knocked off somewhere down the road, I think it's going to be because someone just shot the lights out of the basket, and we were just having a night where we didn't make adjustments. I think that's likely the reason that we're not somewhere along that 6-game march to a national championship that we might, stub our toe. One thing I want to change, I know we're at the end of the podcast. We haven't talked about it, or you didn't mention it, but did you see and what I think is just an absolutely absurd comment, and I believe if I were his employer, I would fire him. Did you see the comment, the statement that ESPN analyst Jay Williams made late last night?
No, I didn't know.
And I will tell you, I had this forwarded to me by, it was initially published in the USA Today, I had it forwarded to me by my daughter, who knows about as much about basketball as I know about brain surgery. And she found it somewhat puzzling as to why someone that makes his living talking about college basketball. I'll just read you the statement that Jay Williams made. If players want change, real change, and force the hand of the NCAA, this is what we need. We, capital we need to do. We not only need to boycott, but this is how we boycott. And he went on to call for a boycott of the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm just now pulling that up as you're talking.
Came in comments in response to ESPN and NBA analyst Jalen Rose calling for a player boycott. And he says, if you want to be effective, if you want to hit them where this really hurts, then we should show them that, we understand that the NCAA is a big business, but so is college basketball is a big business, and we should boycott the Final Four. I think that is the most absurd statement that I have ever heard. And I respected Jay Williams. We've met him. We've talked to him personally. I just can't imagine someone saying that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm thrown for a loop. I'm reading it now as you were talking. I pulled it up on the web here, and I've got a couple different places. That's odd. I mean, one, he makes a living, whatever living he makes, and it's probably a good living, on game day and on studio shows, traveling around the country, talking about college basketball. So promoting the game, and he was a pro for a while. He didn't make a lot of money in the NBA because he was injured in off the motorcycle accident, I believe. Yeah. So his earnings right now are very dependent upon what's going on in college basketball. He's a paid employee of ESPN that spends millions upon millions of dollars televising the NCAA and makes millions upon millions of dollars. And here he is advocating that the players boycott it and there won't be a Final Four. To me, that makes no sense. Well, yeah, because
to me, a fireable offense.
Well, and what confuses me about it is what problem are you protesting that you want a solution for that involves boycotting the Final Four? I mean, we all know that there are so many problems in the NCAA and the NBA. It's hand in hand. It's not just the NCAA. It's the feeder system from the NCAA to the NBA. But protesting / boycotting the Final Four, what does that solve? I mean, are you trying to say that are you trying to say Sean Miller was not wrong to offer $100,000 for a player? Are you protesting that? I mean, I don't know what problem you're trying to fix with that kind of protest. There are lots of things to fix, and there's lots of things you can do to get it fixed. But I'm trying to figure out what the problem he if he's a doctor and he's trying to diagnose the symptoms here, and he's got and boycotting is the pill. How's that going to fix anything? I don't get that.
That's my point. And the other point is, yeah, there's things that need to be fixed. We know that there's a lot of injustice in the college basketball in the world of amateur sports. That we know it. There's terrible injustices, but that doesn't mean that what Sean Miller did, he broke the rules. He broke the rules. Now what do we do? Because we find that these rules are unfair, that he was capable, that it was okay for him to break the rules. Is that what we're saying? And then now the NCAA, the players themselves ought to say, well, that's why he broke the rules, because they're unfair. Well, I don't get that. He broke the rules. He knew the rules. He knew what the code of ethics were, what the NCAA regulations were. They might need to be fixed. There needs to be major reform, but that's down the road. What he did was illegal, and he knew it was illegal. What is boycotting? Why would Williams be advocating that the players boycott the NCAA, the tournament, the Final Four is what he's advocating? Wait till the Final Four and then boycott it, where the actual major money is made.
Yeah.
So I saw that, and it just was like baffling to me. I could not grasp why someone in his position, that's truly biting your nose off to spite your face, or cutting your nose off to spite your face.
Yeah,
is the epitome of that.
I agree. It's almost like that's more just a hot take than it is an actual prescription. I mean, I've been talking this week. You and I talked on Monday, Scott. I was on another radio show yesterday. When I'm asked my opinions on what to do to fix college basketball and the NBA again, because I think it's hand in hand. And I've gotten criticism online, both Twitter and on the Gus Free Press website, for what I've had to say, which is, to boil it down, I say that to me the NBA needs to get rid of the one and done rule, adopt the college rule, which is if you come out after high school, great. If you don't and you go to college, you can't again enter the draft until 3 years afterwards. I'd like to see the NBA step up what it does with its G League and actually make it a developmental system so that players who don't want to go to college, who aren't college material, don't have to pretend to be students for a year or two or three and let them go develop somewhere else in some other way. That doesn't kill college basketball. That actually makes it better because you're going to have less guys who are pretending to be students. You'll have less guys who are there with a handout hoping to get money. I still say that there needs to be some system in place where players do get compensated in some way in addition to their college scholarships. I think we need to do better making sure that those college scholarships lead to degrees that actually are meaningful, that when they're out of school, whether that's right after college for them or after an NBA or a professional career in Europe or wherever else, that those college degrees are something they can fall back on. So there's a lot that needs to be done, none of which is being done now. That itself is controversial because I'm saying pay players, get rid of the one-and-done rule. I mean, there are lots of people who don't like that, and I'm getting hit on all sides from that. But I'm not saying boycott and don't play games and get some stupid point across because Sean Miller offered to give money to somebody. I'll have to read more into that because I'm like you, Scott. We've talked with Jay Williams. I talked to him a couple weeks ago. He was at JPJ for the game day. I mean, he's a reasonable guy. He's one of my favorite guys to talk with. So I'm baffled as well. I'll leave it at that. Baffled is a great word to describe those comments from Jay Williams. I just want to see what his reasoning is, and I haven't seen the reasoning quite yet.
Well, I read the entire story, and if you can come up with an expert, if you tell me that he has a legitimate reason for that, and I'm willing to listen. But from the story I read, baffled is the word, because here's a guy that gets paid well to promote the sport, to be energetic about the sport, and now he's like, to me, it's like, okay, now we got caught. Let's throw it. Now some of the coaches proved to be not playing by the rules, violating the rules. Now let's throw a temper tantrum and just show them who they're dealing with. To me, he should be fired. If I was ESPN, I would fire him immediately.
And I, like I say, and one thing that I've seen people criticize him for, and maybe he's reacting strongly because of this. After his NBA career was cut short, as you mentioned, motorcycle accident cut his career short. I think he was on track to be a really good NBA player, and things didn't work out that way. He, every time I turn on a website now, I get noise, so I hate to do that. He was a runner for an agent between his NBA career and his NCAA career. So he's kind of dipped into that pool. And so now, it comes across as very it's not just hypocritical in the context of he works for ESPN as an analyst of the game, but also he's in the past been a guy that was one of those guys trying to recruit people to go to certain agents. So that's uncomfortable all of a sudden. I mean, so it's a bad look in a couple different ways for him.
It'll be interesting to see if he tries to follow it up with something that maybe he tries to overcome that statement. It'll be interesting to see even his next game or tonight if he's on SportsCenter or whatever to see that. But that comment from coming from him was just totally out of left field. I could not imagine. I thought there was some, quote our illustrious president, it had to be fake news.
Yeah, it felt like that to me, and so we're both scratching our heads on that one. Well, so Jay Williams is off his rocker. Virginia plays Louisville tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I think that is, or 8 o'clock tomorrow. I think it's 8 o'clock tomorrow night. We will have a live blog on the Augusta Free Press website. I've already got my game preview and the game notes up on the Augusta Free Press website, so you can check those out, get my thorough look at the game, and then, of course, Scott and I will get together tomorrow night and give you the quick podcast recap. I'll give you more inside the numbers and more. And then we got a quick turnaround. We got to turn right around and then get ready for Saturday. That's a 4 o'clock tip on Saturday with Notre Dame in town. So a lot of UVA basketball. I keep saying this, but then also for me, I'm heading up to New York, Brooklyn, New York, with Crystal Graham, the AFP team, heading up to cover the ACC tournament. We'll be there all 5 days, starting Tuesday. And Virginia, of course, will play. We know this. This is the only thing we know right now. Virginia plays at 12 o'clock on Thursday. No one else knows when they're playing yet, but Virginia knows they're playing 12 o'clock on Thursday. So we'll have all the ACC tournament action all the way through Saturday's finals. So, boy, a lot of basketball for me here this next week and a half. And then Scott and I, of course, we're getting ready to get on the road for the NCAA tournament that following week, either Thursday the 15th or Friday the 16th. We'll be heading out towards, we think, Charlotte for Virginia's first round game on Friday, which would be if that's the case. So, man, this is a good time of year. We get a lot of basketball. Scott and I do. And, Scott, before I sign off, last thoughts.
I think Virginia plays well tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Virginia comes home with a win. And I will say this. I will guarantee you this, and I'm not going to even divulge how I know this, but I'll challenge any reader or listener to say I'm wrong. If Virginia wins tomorrow night, they will be the only team ever in ACC history that even has a chance to be 9-0 again in the ACC regular season play.
On the road, yes.
On the road. There'll never be another ACC team to post a 9-0 mark in regular season conference play. And maybe the next podcast I'll tell you why I know.
Yeah. There's a reason it hasn't happened yet, and that's because it's so hard to do. So I'll go with Scott. I'll actually back.
It'll never happen again.
No, I agree.
I know that for a fact.
Scott sees the future, and I can't disagree with that at all. So I'll let Scott have the final word there, except for signing off for Scott German. I am Chris Graham, and want to say to you, bid you farewell, and wahoo wah.